Okay, so in today's video, we're going to take a look at some flight footage from the Heewing T2. I'm going to just cut straight to it. I flew the aircraft earlier today. It flew great, and I'm going to show you some footage up here in a moment. Before I do that, I just want to quickly explain today's weather. It was a very calm day. I think the wind was about 10 miles per hour, maybe 15 out push. And it was a very, very hazy day. I just want to mention that so you don't think there was something wrong with the camera. It was just a very, very hazy day. Now, I did actually fly this aircraft for the first time on Sunday, and I hope to show you some footage of that yesterday, but annoyingly, the SD card corrupted, and I lost that footage, so yeah, I went out and I reshot that footage again today, which is the footage I'm going to show you now. Now, before I start, just one thing I want to just quickly talk about is one thing I noticed with the Heewing T2 is it's a little bit hard to launch when you're by yourself. Basically, because it's got such a thick, chunky fuselage on it, it's quite hard to get your hand underneath and hold on to the aircraft with a good grip. I would say I've got reasonably good sized hands. I don't have tiny hands, I have massive hands. I think my hands are fairly normal size. But yeah, I struggled to get a good grip of the aircraft. And also, as soon as I went to full throttle, the aircraft then wanted to fall out of my hand. So yeah, just one thing I noticed, it's a little bit hard to launch this aircraft. And what you probably want to do is just use auto launch, so you can then put your radio down and then use two hands to throw the aircraft. But I'm old school, and yeah, I like to launch manually. But anyway, so let's crack on with it. So I'll show you the launch, and yeah, as you see, the aircraft just went straight up. It didn't sort of dip the nose after I threw it or anything like that. It just went straight up like an arrow, took to the sky with absolutely no problem. The amp draw as the aircraft was launching was just over 23 amps, which is what it is. And then, yeah, once I had the aircraft up in the air, I then flew it a little distance away from myself. So I could then, as I do with all my flights, test return to home. I like to start at the beginning of all my flights just to check it's working. And yeah, return to home worked absolutely fantastic. The aircraft turned around and flew back and then started loitering overhead, which is exactly what you'd want to see. After that, I then just flew the aircraft around for a couple of minutes. Didn't really have a goal straight away. I was just kind of flying around, just kind of get a bit of a feel for the aircraft. And what I found is it actually flew really nicely. It felt sort of very smooth and very locked in. Sometimes you hear people sort of use the expression like it flies like it's on rails. And that's absolutely kind of what I felt like with the T2. I guess because it's such a sort of a thick, heavy, chunky aircraft with a lot of mass behind it, it absolutely wasn't sort of upset by the slight breeze, didn't get bumped around, hardly anything at all. It just felt very locked in. And, you know, the aircraft went exactly where I told it to go. And if I let go of the sticks, it stayed, you know, very sort of smooth and level. The only thing that I did notice is that for some reason, when I did let go of the sticks, the aircraft would start to lose height. It didn't lose height rapidly, but, you know, as you can see on the screen here, like it is sort of losing height slowly. And that could be for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it could just be because I didn't have the CG set up quite right. I did have it so it was a little bit nose heavy. Maybe I had a little bit too nose heavy. So that'd be an easy fix. Alternatively, it could be that when I did the accelerometer calibration on the flight controller, maybe I didn't do that quite right, so maybe it doesn't quite know where level is perfectly. Alternatively, maybe I just don't have the elevator linkage set right, and maybe that's something that, you know, I need to fix. But it's not a big deal, and it's probably user error on my behalf, but it's just something I thought I'd point out, is that the aircraft did want to lose a little bit of height. No, anyway, once I did that, so I then started working through kind of a list of things on the aircraft that I wanted to test. And the first thing that I wanted to test was the rudder. Now, I know that the sort of the design of the rudder on the T2 has been a little bit controversial with quite a lot of people. A lot of people are a bit unconvinced that it will be durable or that it will work especially well. So that's why I was sort of keen to test the rudder to see how well it works. And what I found is that it does work, although it doesn't have a particularly sort of big effect on sort of controlling the aircraft. I mean, at the moment, at this point in the video, like I'm telling the aircraft to yaw to the right, and it is doing it, but it's turning very, very slowly. It's almost unnoticeable, to be fair, that it's sort of turning at all. And then after testing that, I then yaw the aircraft to the left, and again you can see it is yawing to the left, but again it's doing a very slow turn. Curiously, I did notice that it was more willing to turn to the left than it was to the right, and I also noticed this at a later point in the video as well, that the aircraft had a bit of a tendency to want to turn left more than right. I've got no idea why that would be, but yeah, just something odd that I noticed. But I mean, as I mentioned in my previous video on the T2, where I was kind of giving a bit of a showcase and tour of the aircraft, my T2 is the prototype, so there are some imperfections in sort of the build and whatnot. Maybe, I don't know, maybe one of the wings is slightly bigger than the other, or maybe the tail isn't quite straight. I don't know, it could be a number of reasons why the aircraft wants to turn left more than to the right. But yeah, anyway, the rudder, it does work. It seems to be okay, but yeah, didn't seem to have a whole lot of authority. I'm not really too fussed about that because I'm just kind of used to flying without a rudder anyway, so I probably wouldn't really use it, but yeah. Anyway, after doing that, I then tested the flaps. And I remember reading some of the comments on my previous T2 video. There's a few people there that didn't seem to convince that the flaps would really do anything. Well, I can confirm that the flaps absolutely do something. So as you see here, as soon as I enable flaps position 1, that's where the flaps go down 50%. As soon as I do that, the nose of the aircraft noticeably goes up, and you'll see that the aircraft starts to climb. Even though I'm not pulling back on the elevator or anything, the aircraft is starting to climb. The same is also true when I enabled flap position 2. Again, you see the nose go up even more, and the aircraft starts climbing even faster. So yeah, the flaps definitely do something, and you'll see in a bit, I'll use them a little bit more later on in the video. They definitely do have an effect. So yeah, I tested the flaps. After doing that, I then, just for fun, I just tried doing a full throttle test, see how fast the aircraft was. And I did this with the wind behind the aircraft, and it's not especially fast. The aircraft didn't pick up a whole lot of speed, and I think it maxed out around 95, 96 kilometers per hour, which is, I don't know, like 60, 50 miles per hour. I'm not really sure. I'll put it on the screen somewhere. Yeah, not an especially fast aircraft. Although one thing that I will point out, because I know some people will ask me about this, is that actually this aircraft is really quiet, even at full throttle. And also during the launch, which was also full throttle, the aircraft was very quiet. I'd say it's probably not a whole lot louder than the T1. In fact, it may even be quieter than the T1. There's a few times where I flew the aircraft directly over my head, like 50, 60% throttle, and you couldn't even hear it. It's a remarkably quiet aircraft. Now, it is probably important for me to kind of remember, actually, that I know that because my aircraft's a prototype, it's only got the 4S motors on, and I'm only flying with 4S. The final version of the T2, which comes with 6S motors, that may be a lot louder. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. But yeah, certainly in the current configuration I've got at the moment, it's a very, very surprisingly quiet aircraft, which is, pretty cool. So yeah, anyway, after I did the full throttle test and I set an amazing speed record, I then did a couple of glide tests. Took the aircraft up to a bit of altitude, and for the first test I enabled flap position 1. I then let go of the throttle and I let the aircraft just glide down naturally. And what I found was actually the aircraft is surprisingly good at gliding. I mean, it's not going to be comparable to like a proper glider, like a Volantrix Ranger or anything. But it's very good at gliding. It's actually better at gliding than some of the cheap gliders I've had in the past, which really surprised me, especially considering how heavy this aircraft is. It doesn't fall out of the sky like an absolute stone. I think sort of loses about a meter per second, which sounds really bad, but actually to sort of descend from sort of the starting altitude down to, I think it's about 20 meters above the ground or something. It sort of took well over a minute, nearly a minute and a half to make it all the way down, which I think actually is quite impressive. Like I said, this is a very big, very heavy aircraft. Yeah, I was just very impressed with that. And I also did the test a second time, took it up to a similar altitude, and on this occasion I enabled flap position 2, so that's the flaps fully down, and then just brought the throttle to 0 and glided back down again. And on that occasion, it actually took even longer. I think it was about a minute and a half that it took for it to make it all the way back down. And yeah, again, the descent rate was slow. It was a little bit slower than it was with flight position 1. So yeah, I was really quite impressed, actually, with the sort of the gliding ability of T2. I mean, certainly don't buy it with the intention of using it as a glider. That's absolutely, not where it's designed to be. But yeah, just some sort of surprising performance out of the aircraft, which, it's always a good thing to see, right? Did the gliding tests, and then after that, I did a cruise mode test. So all the flying you've seen up to this point was done in horizon mode. I also had cruise mode programmed on the aircraft. And I was just kind of curious to see how the aircraft performed in that flight mode. I mean, obviously I've done the basic program of the aircraft, but I haven't tweaked any of the sort of the complicated under the hood settings like PIDs or anything like that, or changed any sort of significant CLI code. So I was just kind of interested to see how well the aircraft performed in cruise mode. And for the most part, it was pretty good. Although it was doing something that I've never seen an aircraft do before. So on quite a lot of aircrafts in the past, when you put them into cruise mode, what you find is the aircraft are kind of porpoise, that's what we call it, where it just sort of goes nose up and then nose down, and it will slowly oscillate. It's a very common thing to see on a lot of aircraft, and it's also very easy to fix in some of the settings. But as you can see here, the aircraft's not doing that. It's not going up and down. It's actually going left and right a little bit. It's got a bit of a side-to-side waggle, which, I've never seen an aircraft do that before. And also, I noticed that, again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I noticed that whilst in cruise mode, the aircraft had a sort of tendency to want to just very slowly turn to the left. It was trying to hold its heading, but it was, as time was going on, it was just drifting further and further to the left. Again, I don't know why that would be. I don't know off the top of my head what would be causing the aircraft to sway left and right. I know some people are probably going to say it's to do with the rudder. And it may well be. I don't know the answer at the moment. The other thing I will say, I'm not trying to sort of defend Heewing or anything here, but they did tell me when they sent me this aircraft that the design of the rudder wasn't finalized because the rudder wasn't as stiff as they'd like it to be. So it will be stiffer on the final version of the aircraft, and maybe because the rudder isn't stiff enough, maybe that's what's sort of leading to the aircraft wanting to sort of sway to the left and right. Ultimately, I don't know. I didn't find it to be sort of like especially concerning behavior, but it's just something that I noted, and as I do in all my videos, I like to tell the truth. So this is me telling you something that I observed. In general, cruise mode worked pretty well. I was pretty happy with it. Now, after doing that, I then did a stall test. So what I did was took the aircraft up to a good altitude. I then went to zero throttle, and then I pulled back on the elevator. And what I saw happen was exactly what you would kind of want to see happen, is the aircraft quickly dropped a wing. I think it was the right wing on this occasion. It then went into a bit of a kind of a tip stall, but then it instantly recovered by itself. That's a very good characteristic to see. The aircraft didn't just go into a violent sort of like spin all the way to the ground. I didn't need to do anything. The aircraft just recovered. That's a very good characteristic to see in an aircraft. After doing that, I spent a bit of time just doing a couple of flybys. I'll show you some footage here, just doing a little bit of flybys. Then after doing that, I then decided to be brave and do a little bit of acrobatics on the aircraft. Nothing extreme. I literally just did a couple of rolls to see how the aircraft would handle them. And it handled them absolutely fine. I was a little bit nervous because I couldn't remember whether I secured the wings on or not. Turned out I had. And the aircraft rolls fine. And again, I'm just using all the stock PIDs. Like, you could probably get this aircraft flying way more aggressively, acrobatically. I'm literally just using the stock PIDs, and I'm flying in horizon mode as well. So not the quickest or smoothest rolls, but the aircraft does roll, which, is good to see. Now, after that, so you may have noticed in this video, or you may not have, I was riding the throttle quite high, quite a lot. Quite a lot of like times in this flight, I had the throttle sort of like up to like 75, 8% throttle. That's not for any reason, really, other than I'm just a weird pilot. I don't know why I kept doing it. I think maybe it's because the plane's so quiet. I kept increasing the throttle higher and higher because I was getting nervous that I couldn't hear it. certainly the throttle didn't need to be that high. So like towards the end of this flight, I actually started experimenting a bit with just how low could I bring the throttle down. Until it worked out, it didn't need to be that high. Absolutely not. I brought the throttle down to, I think it was about like 35-40% at one point, and the aircraft still flew absolutely fine. There's no need to fly with the throttle really high. It will cruise quite happily at sort of like 40%, at which point it's sort of doing about 30 kilometers per hour. So, I mean, yeah, the aircraft can fly quite slow. And I reckon I could have probably brought the throttle down even lower if I wanted to, especially if I had the flaps deployed. So, yeah, that was sort of all of the various tests I went through, and I was just very impressed with how well the aircraft flew. It was, as I said at the beginning, it felt very locked in. It felt very, very stable. The aircraft went where I told it to. It didn't do anything weird or unusual. It was just a joy to fly. Now, obviously, this is just one flight. I did fly, as I mentioned earlier, on Sunday, and that was a very similar day, very calm. I haven't yet tried flying the aircraft on like a particularly windy day. Obviously, that's something that I will try and do at some point. But I anticipate it'll probably fly fine on a windy day, again, because it's just got so much weight and mass behind the aircraft that it's just not going to get knocked around by the wind a whole lot. So, yeah, I think it'd be a good aircraft to fly in pretty much any weather. But anyway, that's basically the flying that I did today. The only thing that's left to show you now is the landing. And I've got to admit, I didn't do a particularly good landing on this occasion. I've had them almost a bit ashamed to show it to you because I kind of messed it up a bit. Basically, I let the aircraft slow down way too much. And it sort of belly flopped at the very end, as you can see here. But when I flew it on Sunday, I flew it 2 times on Sunday, and both of those times I nailed the landing. It lands absolutely fine. It's very floaty as it comes into land. It doesn't fall out of the sky or anything like that. So yeah, don't judge the aircraft for that particular landing. That's just me being a bit of a rubbish pilot. So that's some flight footage for you from the T2, just to kind of show that it does fly, and it does fly very, very nicely. Hopefully I'll have some more flight videos out at some point in the future. I want to do a bit of an endurance test at some point, see how long it'll fly for. One thing actually, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video. So the largest battery that I own is a 3300 4S battery. Quite big. I'll put a picture of it here. Quite a big battery, but when I had that in the nose of the T2, I was nowhere near hitting CG. This aircraft expects a very big battery in the nose to be able to balance the CG. In fact, what I ended up doing is I ended up borrowing the exact same battery from my friend as well, and then we daisy-chained them together in parallel, and I had both of those batteries in the nose. The total weight of that is about 660 grams, and with those 2 batteries, I was then able to hit CG. So yeah, I'm just letting you know, this aircraft, like, it needs a pretty big battery in the nose to be able to hit the CG, or you're going to want to add like a load of dummy weight, like, I don't know, coins or a brick or something. It needs a lot of weight in the nose to be able to balance the CG. So you might as well just put a very big battery in it. But yeah, if you've got a very big battery in it, then you're going to get a long flight time. So at some point soon, I'm hoping to do an endurance test on the T2 with the 2 dual batteries I just mentioned, and see how long the flight I managed to get. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And also, I will be doing a build tutorial, as I'm famous for doing on this channel. I'll be doing a build tutorial showing how I built this aircraft. So if anyone wants to build one for themselves and they want to know of a good, easy working configuration, you can follow along from that. So yeah, anyway, as always, I've run out of things to say, and to be honest, I think I've just been chatting a bit too much in this one. But I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you have, please do give the video a like. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.